Hello everybody and welcome to the Hidden Breach. We are going to take a look at the new Errata for Malifaux 3rd edition that has dropped last Wednesday and brought some changes to some models that have been shelf keepers up to now, and also some changes to models that we have seen maybe a little bit too often. Before we jump into the changes, most of what I'm going to say is my personal opinion, and if you disagree, do so in a civilized manner in the comments. There's no problem and I have no quarrel with that. Anyhow, then also there are things I might have overlooked or misunderstood, and please remind me of that in the comments as well. Thirdly, I haven't played with all masters or against all masters. There are some things that have been errataed that I do not really have the experience to judge if it's a buff or a nerf, what it means for the faction or the master, and I will say so at the appropriate moments. So let's go into the new model changes. We are starting off in alphabetical order with the Alpinists. First model we are going to look at is the Mole Man. So, front of the card, things that have stayed the same. The burrow trigger and the network of tunnels is still the same. Unimpeded has gone in favor of favorable terrain. So, the Mole Man has now a better version of unimpeded, giving him cover in severe terrain or within 1 inch of impassable terrain. Then, the rough ground ability makes friendly ski markers within 4 inches, severe terrain for it and enemy models. And lastly, the main change on the front of the card is Through the Mountain. During the activation, friendly models with size 2 or less or friendly beasts may remove a tunnel marker within 1 inch of themselves to take this modeling's tunneling action, which cannot declare triggers. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the tunneling action so we can see what it is. The tunneling bonus action has been changed. The range has been reduced to 8 inches, but it can now not only target friendly ski markers, but also terrain markers, which is a huge buff for the Mole Man. And the trigger, the mask trigger, makes it drop a severe tunnel marker within 1 inch of this model. So these are the markers that can be used by this ability by other friendly models. That means with the tunneling ability, you now can dig yourself straight towards any terrain marker, and every strategy marker in the game is a terrain marker. So you can place into base contact with a terrain marker and at least get one buddy to go alongside you. You need a 3 for that, so no problem. Sadly, the model that uses the tunnel marker cannot declare the mask trigger again, so no chain linking it. Other bonus action it gained is the Dig Deep bonus action, dropping a severe tunnel marker within range to have another model use that tunnel marker to go somewhere. Overall, that's a solid buff for the Mole Man. They are now playable, I guess, and provide you with a lot of mobility for some of the clunkier bits of Marco's crew, for example the Slate Witch Maulers. Next up, we got a master change. We got a RASPUTINA change. Now, I have only played against her once, so I'm not hyper familiar with what this means, but I will go over it as we're going along. Water stayed the same. Ruthless is still the same, and Ice Mirror is still the same. Ice Shield has been changed into Sub-Zero Shield, but the wording has stayed the same. The Harsh Winter ability has been changed in a way that it now declares that enemy models can not gain cover from ice pillar markers, which is huge because before it was kind of a thing that you could get behind an ice pillar marker and then get cover from RASPUTINA's shooting actions, which only made her use her shockwave actions. Now her shooting action is more of a viable choice for spending an AP. And then in addition to that, she gained Glacial Surge. After this model cheats fate or discards a card during its activation, it may draw a card. This model may only draw up to X cards this way per activation, where X is equal to the number of ice pillar markers within 8 inches. So that's a lot of card draw actually. And I think you want to cheat in at least 2 or 3 cards during her activation to get all the triggers for your duels. So that's a buff. Also, her defense has been racked up from 4 to 5, which I think was overdue because she was really easy to kill once you got into melee. Looking at the back of her card, first thing that we see is that she has lost the Frozen Touch melee action completely, so she has now no engagement range anymore. Winter Strike has been changed up. The weak damage has gained a blast marker and the severe damage lost a blast marker. It has lost the push models damage by this action up to 1 inch in any direction, and instead gained a +1 damage if any of the blast markers of the action are touching an ice pillar marker. Also, the onslaught trigger has been replaced with the Mars Hysteria trigger. What does this mean? Overall, you can get a better min damage with if some of your blast markers touch an ice pillar, and you don't get as much blast damage if you get a severe hit in. I think min 3 on a 12-inch range gun is very good, and I think it can be considered a buff, but losing the onslaught is kind of hard against some targets which you would like to hit more often. Then the freeze over shockwave has been changed. It now drops the shockwave like any other shockwave and doesn't center it on an ice pillar marker anymore. The damage has been removed and it now only gives slow and staggered. And friendly December models within range heal by 1. The swift action trigger has been removed to be replaced by 3 triggers, which are cracked ice, cruelty and hypothermia. Now when playing against Rasputina, the main thing she did was drop an ice pillar marker and then use freeze over to drop the shockwave again and again and again and again, which once you were staggered would make you take a horrendous amount of movement duels, which you would ultimately fail and take a lot of damage. And I think they did not want her to be played like that. But also I think that was her main strength, so let's see how this will play out. Ice pillars are the same, I guess, only have gained a reposition trigger, so you can now move when you drop an ice pillar marker if you are so inclined to do. And the shatter bonus action has been removed. Another shockwave that would center itself on an ice pillar marker has been removed and been replaced with December's Passage. Now December's Passage is kind of interesting because you can target an ice pillar marker and name any number of models within 2 inches. This also racks up the target number of the action, but you can push the ice pillar marker up to 4 inches and then you can place all chosen models within 2 inches of the ice pillar markers. So it's a little ice pillar marker taxi for all of your crew, and mobility is always a good thing to have in Malifaux 3rd edition, so I think that's a buff. Overall, I can't really say what seasoned Rasputina players are going to say about this. It feels like a rework. It doesn't feel like a straight up buff to me, because she lost the ability to do 6 times freeze over and then shatter, which if you place an ice pillar marker correctly would most of the time be very devastating. Again, this has to be playtested, which we are going to do in the next week, so we will see then. Next up in line is Neil Henry, one of the enforcers of the Foundry keyword. Neil received a slight buff. His defense has gone up from 5 to 6, so things that stayed the same: hard to wound, ride the rails and flurry. And he lost Sabotage in favor of Nail Down. Nail Down: after this model kills an enemy model, it may drop a scrap or scheme marker in base contact with itself. That's pretty good. Before it was only when he killed a construct he could drop a scheme marker into base contact with himself. So now if he kills any model and it gives you the choice between dropping a scrap or a scheme marker, the scrap marker for using Ride the Rails with all of your other models, giving you more mobility, which is always a good thing. The Rail Driver action has been named Steel Driver now, and the armor piecing trigger has been incorporated into the standard action. Also, you don't have to remove scrap markers within 3 inches anymore, you just have to be within 2 inches of a scrap marker to get +1 to your final duel. So now, when you're next to a scrap marker, you have a stat 7 versus defense 2 for 5 damage action ignoring armor, which could get some nice triggers. As for tactical actions, Whirling Hammer has been replaced with Bulldoze, which we by now know from the new Von Schill or new Hoffman cards, which is basically a push on which you remove markers and can drop scrap markers on the way. So another way to transform markers into scrap markers is good for your crew and their mobility. Also, it makes enemy models take a movement duel or suffer 2 damage and staggered. And Whirling Hammer has been incorporated as a trigger. If you get a mask, the enemies get a negative flip to duels generated by this action, which will more or less nearly always have them take 2 damage and gain staggered, which is also a huge buff. Reckless bonus action has been removed with the Get to Work bonus action that forces enemy models to take a target number 12 defense duel when they are near a scrap marker or get pushed towards it. So we can bind enemy models at the location of your scrap markers, and you can jump to them and hit them over the head. Also, friendly Foundry models may choose to fail this duel and heal 1. It is a good support skill. Even if Reckless may have been the better bonus action to have, it's more in style with the card and with the flavor of the crew, so I approve of that. Overall, that's a decent buff, and yeah, maybe I will see Neil Henry played in one of the next games when I face off against Mei Fang. So that was it for Arcanist. Next up we have Bayou, and we are starting with the big one. Francois Lacroix has been altered. Yeah, what has stayed the same? He still has Flinch, Flurry, and the bigger they are, but he has lost Hard to Kill And Showdown has been replaced with Rapid Reaction. Rapid Reaction is a new ability. It says this model receives plus ramps to the first opposed duel it takes during its action. Now Showdown was pretty good, and hard to kill of course is always good, so Francois has lost on the front of his card. Let's take a look at the back of his card. The sword action has lost the inbuilt Rams trigger, so no min-3 beater there anymore. The Gremlin Menace has gained the sudden strike trigger, and it now ignores other models while pushing. Also, Francois has gained challenge bonus action in addition to a showdown trigger. In our showdown, enemy only target must not have activated yet this turn until the end phase. Enemy models other than the target suffer a minus to actions targeting this model, and this model suffers a minus to actions targeting models other than this action's target. Now, this has been more or less been the replacement for the showdown ability from the front of his card. And I think it's okay. You can use the trigger to protect Francois for the rest of the turn, giving him a huge survivability buff. Also here, the ambush bonus action has stayed the same. Overall, I think that's definitely a nerf. Survivability has gone down. Also, min-3 has gone down. I mean, you still get use Gremlin Menace, use Sudden Strike, Flurry, and another attack, maybe with a stone. You get 3 attacks on a positive flip with stat 7 against defense most of the time because of the bigger they are. So it's not a bad model, but I think some people will miss the older version. Next up in line is Remy Lacroix, who has gone up in cost from 6 to 7. Most of the front card has stayed the same. We have Flinch, we have Sniper, and we have the bigger they are, but Advanced Sights has been replaced with Expert Shot. So he now no longer ignores concealment, which is a huge debuff for him actually, because now you have to really watch your positioning or you need focus to do stuff. Back of his card, the Clockwork Rifle action has lost the Swift action and No Witnesses trigger and gained a Stagger trigger, so that's also a nerf. Swift action gave him more shots and No Witnesses also gave him the odd combination of critical strike and armor piercing. Quick Retreat stayed the same, so overall that's a nerf. I think Remy Lacroix and Francois were played out of keyword quite a lot, so that's the reason for this rework. Next up we have the Swanecurst, and I'm very happy that they kind of reworked the Swanecurst. Things that stayed the same are Frenzy Charge, Blast Resistant, Hard Knock Life, and Infused Body. Magical Inference has gone away, so you can no longer discard a Glowy token to add a suit of your choice to any of your duels. He's now reduced to using Glowy tokens in a defensive manner. And Demise Unstable Transformation has been changed into it only ever gives you a Bayou Gremlin when the Swanecurst dies, but you also get a little 2-inch explosion, which gives enemy models within 2 inches of the Swanecurst 1 damage. And last but not least, his health pool has been increased from 7 to 8 health points, making him a bit more sturdy. Back of his card, the Tusks action has stayed the same but gained the Tear of a Bite trigger to give him an additional option for healing. The Heroic Intervention has gained an inbuilt Ram suit and the Ram's trigger I'm No Coward. This model gains shielded +1 for each other model moved by this action. So if you move 3 enemy models, you gain shielded +3, making you more tanky, making you more of a centerpiece beater for your Wong or Ulix crew. And Frightening Reminder stayed the same. And one big thing that I forgot with the front of the card, Swanecurst have lost the Sui keyword and are now finally happily pigs, which means that you can now use them in a Ulix crew the way you would want them to use in a Ulix crew. So you get all the things you want, you get the advantages from Old Mayor's aura, you get all the Ulix auras, you get Penelope's aura and all the good stuff. There was so much that they were missing out on in the Ulix keyword that you barely ever saw them there. So yeah, hopefully we'll see them more on the table right now. Next up are the Gartrobocor. And the Gartrobocor have been reworked in no small manner. And they lost the Big Voodoo and gained Blast Resistant +2. I think makes them more viable in a Wong crew, to be honest. Next up we go to the back of the card, and there you can see some changes. Swamp Spirits has stayed the same. They lost their Obey, which is gross. I mean, that's a huge loss for all Bayou players right there. Healing Energy has gained 1 more stat and lost the Deja Vu trigger, which is also a huge loss because that was their stick more or less. They used the Deja Vu trigger to draw cards You can use them to heal your models, draw cards, and obey other models, which was more or less what everybody took them for. They gained the Consolidate power bonus action with the big Voodoo trigger, which is not bad because it gives you a bit more mobility, but compared to losing Obey, yeah, this is pretty lackluster. I think they were overused in Bayou, not only in the Raider keyword, but in in any keyword, because they gave you too much for their cost in regards to healing, mobility, activation, and card draw. Next up is Wong. Now, I will immediately tell you that I'm not very familiar with Wong, how he's played. I've never played against him. I've only seen 1 or 2 games where he has been played, so don't take anything I say for granted here. Crackling Energy stayed the same, Evasive stayed the same, the Quick Getaway and Uncontrollable Magic stayed the same, and Counterspell has been removed with a 3 Demon back. And actually that's a huge buff, because enemy models cannot declare triggers during opposed duels with these models, and that not even if they discard a card. There's no way around it, you can't declare triggers against Wong. So the Iron Fan of Tsu Li is now stat 6 against defense, which I think is nice, but won't get everyone to be overly passionate. And the Fuzap action has been changed from a shooting action to a non-melee ranged action, which is a huge deal, because I think formerly you could lock Wong down pretty hard by just engaging him and thereby negate his best action, which is Fuzap. Now only drops 1 shockwave marker initially, but has the inbuilt Cataclysm trigger on Rams now. It lost the severe injury trigger. I think the exchange overall is very good. So now if Wong is engaged, he can still go ahead and throw 1000 shockwaves and be a happy Wong. I think the glow hasn't changed, but gained the trigger Protective Glow, which is pretty good, because the action lets you draw cards for every 2 glowy tokens, and you get a glowy token for every model within range back. So that's a small buff there if you get the crow, so it's kind of nice. And launch into space, it has been clarified that while it launches a marker into space and drops it somewhere else, the controller does not change by this. That's the only thing that has been changed in this action. I think overall it is a buff. He's not so easily denied anymore. I don't know if there's still a yay we got buffed party on with all the Wong players in the world, but I will ask around. That was it for Bayou, and I think we received a slight nerf on some fronts, and Wong and these Wankers got buffed because they saw not enough table time. Next up we got Explorers, and if I'm going to be talking more about Explorers or have more of an opinion about Explorers than overall the other factions, it's because I've played Explorers for the last 6 months now mainly, so let's dive into it there. So let's see what nice changes Weird has in mind for us. First of all, we got the Archivist, everybody's hated faction out of keyword model. Things that have stayed the same. He's still got Arcane Shield +2, and he still has Siphon Power and We Are Legion. What he hasn't got anymore, which I'm very glad about, is Ill Omens +2. You don't get +2 to initiative by just taking the Archivist now, which is good, because now you won't see him out of keyword anymore at all, I guess, like never. He gained Dust and Cobwebs, which makes him throw a destructible severe web marker anywhere within 8 inches when he activates, which is kind of still a good ability because it gives more in keyword synergy, so you will still see him in keyword, I guess. Inaudible Whisper has been reworked. The Killer Late Feast trigger has lost the +1 to damage, which I think is fair because it still makes the ignore hard to kill or demise, and it's still on a 6 with this willpower, no shooting ranged attack. Also, it gained Hush trigger on Tomes, which is only once per turn, what forces another target number 13 defense duel, or target gains a parasite token. So he is now actively contributing to the enlargement of the swarm, which I think is rather more in style. Yeah, overall, this has been a nerf, which was deserved and awaited by I think everybody that has ever played against Explorers. I don't know if many of the Explorers players are whining right now, but I didn't like taking the Archivist out of keyword anyway, because +2 to initiative for taking a model is just much too good. And I think with the change on the Archivist, it was more or less what everybody wanted. So next up we got Nexus herself. Nexus herself got a little rework too. It looks the same, but if you watch closely, Omnipresent Influence is now an aura of 12 inches, which means that for drawing line of sight from friendly models, you now need to have line of sight to the models you draw a line of sight from, like you do with, for example, the Raider, since one of the last FAQs. I think that's, although this is a huge nerf, it was necessary. You now have to pay more attention to your positioning and are not able any longer to ignore everything between Nexus and everything else. The Hive Strike ability has lost the Siphon Life and the Severe Injury triggers in favor of Blood Loss, so you still can give Injured, but only to a maximum of +1. And the Terror for Bite trigger to heal Nexus, which I think is also kind of nice, makes her do less damage, but maybe heal her more. So overall, it adds to her survivability, and I'm okay with that. The Exoskeletal Connection hasn't been changed in any way. Citizens of Malifaux, the stat has been upped by 1. Target number has gone up by 2, so it's now stat 7 to target number 10. So the way it is worded right now, you would not need an 11 for 3 eyes and ears right now, you would need a 12, and you can't get 4 eyes and ears for a red Joker. I think that is the reason they changed that. And Soul Shock has stayed the same. Now at this point we have to go and take a look at the Will of Cadmus upgrade, because it's more or less an addition to her card. And what has been changed there is the Parasitic Grasp rule, because before you could treat enemy models with a Parasite token as friendly models throughout your and their activation, and now you can only do that during friendly activations. So if an enemy hits you now and he has a Parasite token, you cannot ping him back for damage, which was a thing that everybody hated about Nexus, and it was pretty overpowered, so that's a good change overall. Also, they changed the damage you get from gaining another Parasite token from irreducible to normal damage, so armor and everything else now sticks and reduces that damage, which is kind of nice. The Will of Cadmus ability has been altered slightly. The target number is now lower, so you don't need 7s and 8s most of the time, you just need 5s and 6s most of the time. Triggers have stayed the same, but Uncomfortable Twitch has been altered into after succeeding, so you now actually have to pass the duel to move a model by another 2 inches. So overall that was a huge hit for Nexus, but I think it was deserved, and I'm fairly happy as an Explorer player because the complaints will not be as gross as they have been before. Now English Ivan has been nerfed, and that's one of the only models that I haven't seen coming really, but I think it was necessary because everybody else I've talked to agreed with that it was necessary. So front of the card, what has stayed the same? Black Mirror Dark Deception has stayed the same. Sustaining Shadows and Ungentlemanly Affairs have stayed the same. The Penumbral Converter has its range changed from an aura of 6 to an aura of 2. So now can only change the type of marker from Shadow to Scheme or vice versa in an aura of 2, which severely limits your options to do stuff with it, like setting up schemes, setting up teleports by having another model dropping a scheme marker. And it's now more or less reduced to having Ivan turn over scheme markers next to him for additional defense with the Dark Deception ability. Also, Ivan has lost the Umbra keyword, which also it's kind of a hard nerf for him, because now what this does is you can't move yourself with your own tactical action anymore. It's point 1. Point 2 is you can't be healed by Gypsum the Vault anymore. So you have actually no healing left. So you're now forced to play around Dark Deception for a defensive option with English Ivan. Gain Deal with the Dark to clarify that you can still hire Umbra keyword models without an additional cost because they're still not out of keyword. Back of the card, Runic Siphon has stayed the same. Intercision trigger has been changed to that this action's dual total must be 14 or more to declare this trigger. So you need an 8 to actually summon something, which I think is very, very reasonable. Most other summoners also need an 8 or something along those lines to summon a model. That's a good search. I'm okay with that. You cannot arbitrarily summon a model with a 1-off cross if your opponent gets unlucky and flips badly. That's a good change. Black Soulstone has a stat and target number reduced by 1 and has stayed the same, but now English Ivan can finally ignore the effects of that shockwave, which gives the opportunity to bomb models that swarm you next to you with shockwaves, which I think is rather good. So overall, Ivan has been nerfed. I think it's still a strong master, and with the nerf, the title version looks a bit more appealing to me right now, so I think that's good. Next up in line is CALYPSO. CALYPSO has lost 1 point of defense, gone from 6 to 5. All-terrain armor has stayed the same, Mindless has stayed the same, and Vehicle has stayed the same, so that's cool. Still same old CALYPSO. Demise Explosive has been reduced to Demise Explosive 1, so now not use him to bomb for 2 damage, but only for 1, which I think is good, because by rebuilding CALYPSO you could repeatedly bomb the enemy crew for 2 damage, which is rather a lot. If you do it like 1, 2, 3 times, that's 6 damage to maybe 3 or 4 models if you get it right, and I really don't have to do much for it. Also, original creator has been changed to original creators, which is a huge change. So now you only reduce the hiring cost of CALYPSO if you're playing Dr. Beep within a Maxine Agassiz crew. So if you play it in keyword, it still only costs 10 soul stones. But if you play Beep and CALYPSO out of keyword, they now cost 14 soul stones, which is quite a lot. Back of the card changes. Mining tools have stayed the same. And they have removed the Mass of Tentacles trigger on, which I also think is a very necessary change, because Driller should be used to destroy destructible terrain. And what it was used to do is cheat in a low tome card to push enemy models within 3 and damage them by 1, bypassing some defense mechanisms like Incorporeal, for example. So maybe Driller will now be used for what it was originally intended. And if you want the Mass of Tentacles triggers, you now have to do the thing you should be doing anyway and punch people in the face with mining tools. Onward bonus action has been reduced instead from 4 to 3, so you now need an 8 if you were riding Beep into CALYPSO and not a 7 anymore. Any Tomes card will still get you the Onward bonus action. Yeah, I don't know why they changed that, but I pretty much do not mind. I think this is overall a good change. CALYPSO is still viable in keyword. I tried it out already and it's still the same old CALYPSO. It's a bit more killable right now. It's not super oppressing, and I think you won't see it as much out of keyword anymore, because for 14 soul stones, there are some options you could take. As before, when they cost 12 soul stones, I was in many keywords at a loss what to take in keyword, because CALYPSO and Dr. Beep were always better than taking stuff in keyword. Going over to Seeker keyword, Mikhail has had a small revamp. Armor, Caught in the Ring, still the same, hard to kill, unyielding, unimpeded. His movement has been changed from 4 to 5, which looks like a buff right now. And his Chronicle has been changed from teleporting him into base contact with the healed model to being able to move up to 5 inches towards the healed model. So you now can't teleport him with pings, ignoring everything else. You have to move him up. I think that's good. I think the teleports were a bit over the top, so let's take a look at the back of his card. Main change, I think, is that Koshai, the Epitaph Blade's range has been reduced from 2 inches to 1 inch. So now he's not so much of a I can engage all of your crew and you only have to hit me guy. 1 inch range is so much less in that regard in combination with Caught in the Ring than 2 inches was. That's a huge nerf. I think he was very powerful in that specific role that he played in the Seeker crew and in many other crews who took him out of keyword. Seems to be necessary. I would have expected a change on the Jetsa card rather than having Mikhail changed, but I think you could do it either way. Father's Legacy has been changed to other friendly only, so you can't use it on yourself anymore to gain a focus and then hit somebody over the head. And Cut Them Down has been changed into Sudden Strike, which makes sense in a streamlining kind of way, because Cut Them Down is when you give another model an attack action, while Sudden Strike is the trigger to give yourself an attack action. Has been changed from Mask to Rams. Overall, you need more Rams in this crew, so there's a bit more competition in getting the trigger now. Next up, we got the Brocken Spectre, and the Brocken Spectre has been hit. Terrifying has been removed. Everything else stayed the same. Now no longer terrifying. Yeah, that's a sad nerf for all Ivan players, but they were a bit hard to remove sometimes with the terrifying. Faraday Caller, Born of Shadow, and they are still a scary model without terrifying, so yeah, why not? Back of the card, a thing that has changed is Hallowed Glory. Hallowed Glory was the action that you most of the time always took with the Brocken Spectre, because enemy models in base contact with you suffer 2 damage if you flip a 6, which is stupid because it's a tactical action and also bypassed a lot of the defense mechanisms, and your enemy has no chance of resisting that. Now it's only enemy models that moved into base contact with this model this way suffer 2 damage, so you actually have to have them fail the duel and move towards the Brocken Broken Spectre and into base contact, and then you take 2 damage. So this really has been nerfed kind of hard. So now you have to use Death Touch to kill people, which does 2, 3, 4 reducible damage on a stat 6 versus defense duel, which is a horribly good attack, which you simply would not use before. So yeah, I think now they work as intended. The Alpinist got a little rework. Climbing gear wording has been changed to friendly models that start a move within 4 inches may ignore all models' terrain and vertical distance while moving, while before, when you moved out of the aura by passing through a wall, you would lose the ability in the middle of the wall, and then there was the question, could you complete the move? And it was pretty stupid, to be honest. I think climbing gear was always intended to be as it is worded now, and yeah, maybe you can really use him now, because on some boards or some maps, ignoring all terrain, vertical distance and stuff might be pretty good. And they changed the back of his card. Tin Feast now doesn't flip, but always heals 2, which I think it's alright. Nothing too exciting there. We got the Intrepid Effigy and the Intrepid Emissary. They have been reworked a bit in the following manner. Front of the cards are the same, but the Aura of Courage has been reworded into until the end phase after a friendly model within range passes a duel generated by an enemy model by 2 or more, the friendly model may heal 1, which now means you don't heal from all the duels you do targeting your own models doing your own activation, but you only heal from opposed duels, shockwave duels that you pass by 2 or more. And yeah, that is a nerf for the whole faction. That is pretty significant, to be honest, because some strategies heavily relied on the Aura of Courage to give extra healing, which it now doesn't do in the way that it would have been doing before. Intrepid Emissary is still a good model though. Take the hit, defense 7, give everybody shielded, 2, 4, 6 damage track, but not the auto take it was. I think it's more of a bodyguard model right now. Anyhow, last but not least, we have the Cryptologist, which were added to the Wastrel keyword when Explorer Society was released and then have never been seen again, I guess. Apart from being part of the Cadmus keyword, where they have been seen all the time. So, Armor +1, Death of Malifaux, Looted Supplies stayed the same. Ancient Technology has been reworded that the opposing player can always discard a card, no matter if it's their model or your model. Do that, why ever they worded it that way, I don't know. They gained Rapid Reaction Tomes, same as Francois did. Receives a tome to the first opposed duel it takes during this activation, which is good because it now has a mass of tomes triggers on more or less any of their attack actions. Clockwork Arm has gained the Purification trigger, which is kind of good because you can end conditions on the target if you really need, and 5 against defense should work most of the time if you got a good card. So if you have to remove the Burning 200 from a Fire Golem that got a bit cheeky, there you go. Cursed Translation has been updated and gained a plus flip on the duel, which is huge. Now you have a blast action with a plus flip against willpower, and also gained another trigger, which is throw your arm at them once per activation. You suffer 1 damage, target suffers 1 damage, and you drop a scrap mark into base contact with the target, which could be good if you're targeting something next to McCabe, so he gets a scrap marker to draw cards and then maybe get another upgrade from Branch for Relics or the title's bonus actions. So yeah, that has been a buff indeed. And now the main rework is the Antique Timepiece. The Antique Timepiece formerly was that you needed a 9 and resolve any effects on the target that would resolve at the start of its activation, which was mainly used to make Dr. Meredith Stanley make more Berserker Husks from Eyes and Ears, and you can no longer do that now because Antique Timepiece now can only target other friendly Wastrel or minions, and the target takes a bonus action listed on one of their attached artifact upgrades, and you don't need to flip anything. What that does is you gain a bonus action from an upgrade, which could be good, or you can have a model take his usual bonus action during his activation and then have the Cryptologist use Antique Timepiece to have that model throw the artifact over to another model, giving that model fast or just giving that model the upgrade. So I think that's kind of nice. I think Cryptologists are still not the most exciting model, but now they definitely have a use as a backline supporter for McCabe. So that was all for Explorer Society. We got hit, but I think we got hit at the right spot in the right amount. I can't complain, and I'm looking forward to play stuff without having people complain about stuff being overpowered, so I'm good with that. Going over to Guild, not much has changed here. The Orderly has been reworked. Hard to Wound has stayed the same, but Research, Specimen, Restraints and Constriction has been removed for Clingy, which has your enemy pass a target Mama 12 movement tool after moving, or you can place the Orderly into base contact with him. And Medical Personnel. This model is never considered engaged by enemy models with conditions. So before it was Restraints, in which enemy models would be ignored for purposes of strategies and schemes, and now Medical Personnel gives the Orderly the ability to not be engaged by enemy models with conditions. So the role from keeping your enemy from doing schemes and strategies has changed to being actively able to score or do stuff pure engagement range for models that have conditions. So yeah, I think it's a role change. The melee action has been completely exchanged. Necrotic Injection has been replaced with Grapple, which does less damage now, but automatically gives staggered, which is kind of nice with Dr. Grimwell, who can use it for lobotomy, and has gained the hold down trigger on a crow, which could take another model, take a shooting action against this, which is good in Guild because everybody has a Peacebringer to shoot at another target. Emergency Surgery has stayed the same, and he finally gained a bonus action, which he hadn't had before, which was very sad. And he gained Creep Along, which is good because he's move 6 and can move along the board better now. Overall, that's a buff. I don't know if you will see those models often, but for crews that don't have a dedicated low point scheme runner, it's definitely an option now. Thalarian Quellers have been reworked, and I've never played with or against those models, so I'm baffled as to if anybody used them before. Arcane Shield Counterspell and Attuned have stayed the same. Barrier to the Other World has been thrown out in favor of Gunfighter and Suppress Magic. Suppress Magic is kind of strong, so you can make enemy models within 6 inches discard a card to be able to use a Soulstone effectively. That can really hinder your enemy master or henchman. Otherwise, Arcane Staff action stat has been reduced from 6 to 5, which I think for a 6 Soulstone model is the correct value. Now, Startle has been replaced with Mage Brand. Mage Brand gives the enemy adversary Witch Hunter and have one of your friendly Witch Hunter models in line of sight of the target push 4 inches towards it, which sounds like a good action to me. Setting up the kill for somebody else. Flaming Brand has been removed, and I didn't start the fire has stayed the same. Flaming Brand has been removed with the anti-magic field bonus action. Friendly only. If the target is a Witch Hunter, this action receives plus tomes to its final duel. Until the end phase, enemy models cannot declare triggers in opposed duels with the target. So you can protect maybe your master or henchman or something else, or block a model from being able to declare defensive triggers against one of your beta models. And yeah, that's a good option. I think for 6 Soulstones, they are now a legit good pick, apart from being maybe a bit squishy, but they are range damage dealer, so I think that's their lot. And that's all for Guild. Small changes there, maybe make some people happy. So over to the Neverborn faction. We start off with the Boltungen. The Boltungen have been reworked a bit. They lost the pack mentality and abundant growth ability in favor of favorable terrain and hard to kill, which is good because the thing they lacked the most was survivability, and hard to kill and favorable terrain give them just that, giving them cover in severe terrain or within 1 inch of impassable terrain. And yeah, hard to kill is just such a good ability. I'm sad for the Titania players that they lost abundant growth in the process, and for fans of the pack mentality ability, also not so nice, but I think overall we gained a more usable model by these changes. Back of the card has stayed the same, but for the bonus action, Forage has been replaced with Homeward Bound, which is a bit also the replacement for abundant growth. Choose a friendly terrain marker in play, remove target scheme marker, create the chosen terrain marker in base contact with this model. This is a bonus action that now benefits both crews instead of abundant growth just only benefiting the Titania crew. You will probably most of the time choose an Ice Pillar or Underbrush marker, maybe a Hungry Land marker, and take an enemy scheme marker to transform it. It's a situational bonus action. I think it won't crop up every game. Yeah, I think they've gained a bit of survivability and playability. Next up we have the Blood Bratch. The Blood Wretch has gained the Hard to Kill ability as well, because they lacked survivability, as well as the Boltangin. Back of the card, they have gained the Furious Swipe bonus action, which lets everybody within 1 inch takes 1 damage unresisted, which is pretty good if you can pull it off. Overall, I've never played with or against Blood Wretches, and I'm at a loss at how to judge this change, but I think getting Hard to Kill hasn't hurt them, and the bonus action also, so yay Blood Wretches. Changelings have been changed. Before I continue, I do not have a lot of experience playing with or against changelings. They've lost nothing on the front of their card, but gained the Sidekick ability. Sidekick being a lesser version of By Your Side. You discard a card, you can place the model into base contact with a friendly non-minion that shares a keyword with it within aura of 12. So it's 12 inches and you need line of sight, so not as good as By Your Side, but still a bit of extra movement for discarding a card. Back of the card has been changed quite a bit. It has been exchanged completely, to be honest. So Whisper Truth and Just Like You have been replaced with Unassuming Demeanor, Take by the Hand on the wrong side. So Just Like You being taken away from the changelings makes them more or less invalid in a Lucius crew right now. So I kind of like the Whisper Truth ability on the card, because it was something special that not a lot of models had. They gained the Unassuming Demeanor, which is a good attack action for a low cost model, because it makes you take damage flips at a positive without investing too much. And the Take by the Hand attack bonus action, which lets you push the target in any direction, push this model up to 3 inches towards the target, so a bit of extra movement for you or for an enemy model. And as a tactical action, they gained On the Wrong Side, which is once per turn, and you can target an enemy scheme or terrain marker. And when it's a terrain marker, you can discard a card to drop a scheme marker into base contact with it, and then you remove the target. It's a 1 inch marker removal, which is obviously good, but I think Just Like You had more possibilities for the changelings. So I think if I understood the Neverborn players correctly, that's a nerf. The Blackblood Shaman, everybody's favorite Blackblood Shaman. Now they have been reworked, and I think also that this might be a nerf from my point of view. Blackblood stayed the same, of course. Flight, Blood Clot, regeneration +2. Relish in Blood has been removed. So Blackblood Shamans are now the only Nephilim minions that cannot use grow tokens to grow into something bigger. So a Blackblood Shaman is not an automatic turn 2 Major Nephilim anymore, which I think will make many Neverborn players very sad. They gained Ancient Ritual. Ancient Ritual is after this model moves, it may remove a corpse mark in base contact with itself to a friendly Nephilim within 2 inch, gain focus +1. And one friendly size 1 Nephilim may gain a grow token instead of focused. Models cannot be affected by Ancient Ritual more than once per turn. Now, this is in exchange for the Blasphemous Ritual bonus action they had. So they still can pulse out focus, but in a 2 inch radius and not more than once per turn, which also means taking 2 Blackblood Shamans doesn't gain you anything in that regard. Yeah, maybe taking 1 is still very good for the focus pulses. Then on to the back of the card. The only thing that has been changed there, that Blasphemous Ritual has been removed. So Blackblood Shamans received a nerf, because I think they were taken in nearly every Neverborn crew, because having a double Aura 3 pulses for focused and having a Major Nephilim in turn 2 is also too good to be missed. That's it for Neverborn. Surprisingly, Neverborn got a bit of a nerf, apart from Boltangin and the Blood Wretches. Over to Outcast. Our all favorite Drachentrooper has been reduced in cost from 8 to 7. Also lost 1 health in the process. They've lost Clear the Area in favor of Containment Suit. Now you can't remove all corpse and scrap markers within 3 inches anymore, but you're unaffected by hazardous terrain, can't gain poison or injured, which makes them more survivable. Now back of the card has been reworked quite a bit. We lost the Burn It Down or Move Burn abilities. Knife has stayed the same. Flamethrower has stayed the same, but has lost the Flame Wall trigger. Can't create pyre markers with Drachentroopers anymore, which is kind of sad, but still 6 versus movement for 2 blast, 3 blast, 4 double blast damage and burning +2 is pretty good. And you gained the Light It Up bonus action. You can choose a type of non-scheme marker. You do a Shockwave, defense 11, burning +2, and remove any number of markers of the chosen type touching a pulse generated by this Shockwave, which is kind of nice. You can remove any kind of marker with this Shockwave. So for example, you can remove the Hoffman pylon markers, or you can remove the underbrush markers, or you can remove Hungry Land markers. And against Hungry Land markers, this will be very, very good. And it also has the move or burn trigger. When resolving, friendly models may choose to fail to resist this shockwave. Any that do so may end one non-burning condition on themselves. So again, burning +2 and one non-burning condition on your model. So situational, but might be a lifesaver. Over to Barbaros, which we haven't seen too much. He gained the returned keyword, which I've never seen before. Armor, Black Blood have stayed the same. The Cage Fighter trigger has stayed the same. The Nephilim Loyalist has been changed into cannot be hired into crews containing Nekima. So you can also not hire him if your crew is for example, led by Hayriddim. But whatever, I don't think that's a huge change, unless I missed something. So we lost regeneration +1 in favor of Brute Fighter. When this model activates, it heals 1. If this would heal this model in excess of its maximum health, it may have any friendly model within 4 move up to 2. So this is kind of a good action. If you're at full health, you get extra movement. It's better than regeneration plus, so it's obviously above. And Barbaros gained Caught in the Ring, which we know from Mikhail. It's a very good action. It can protect your models, and you don't need to challenge everyone anymore, because you can just engage them. Back of the card. The challenge action has been removed for exactly that purpose, and I think everything else, as far as I can see right now, has stayed the same. So overall, slight buff for Barbaros. I will just have to go and try him out and see if he's more viable than before. I have a soft spot for him because I like the model and the fluff, but he did not perform up to his cost up to now. Lastly, we got the Winged Plague. The Winged Plague was not played as much as people would have liked them to be played. Everything on the front of the card has been staying the same. The plague spreads has been reworked during the end phase, push this model up to 3 inches towards a model in line of sight without a blight token, and after moving other models in base contact with this model, gain a blight token. So I think this is more what this was intended to be, a model that spreads the blight tokens and spreads the plague around by moving. Also, it has gained movement 6. Which was one of the points that people complained about, that it was very slow and didn't do its job proper. And back of the card stayed the same. Maybe they get played more right now. It's a small buff. Over to Resurrectionist. Our favorite new master, Dr. McMorning in Sanitary, has been given a slight hit, I guess. Front of the card has stayed the same. Back of the card, they changed Desperate Plot, so you can only ever have one appendage upgrade on every model. You have to discard any other appendage upgrades before attaching another one. And I think that's reasonable, because if you have 3 of these upgrades on, let's say, the Rogue Necromancy, it was a really scary model. On the other hand, I'm a bit sad, because I think it's hilarious to have something with extra heads, legs, arms and skin walking around, being a scary, shambling appendage collection. But anyhow, Plastic Surgery has been altered to friendly experimental only, which is what everyone wanted it to be from the start. So over to the 10 Thunders. Fuhatsu got altered quite a bit. He is now an enforcer, not a henchman anymore. Huge change there. His cost has been dropped from 9 to 8, and he has lost the Rapid Fire ability in favor of the Covering Fire ability. Covering Fire we know from the Gatling Gunners from the other side starter box, which are in guild. After this model fails a shooting action, it can discard a card to have another friendly model within 3 of the target take a non-charged general action, and the target is not treated as engaging any model. I think this is a very useful ability. It's not as good as Rapid Fire, obviously, but it can save your bacon when scheming, setting up schemes, as for example, deathbeds or detonate charges. Over to the back of his card, Hurricane Punch stayed the same. The Gatling Gun has been reworked. It's now 6+ with an inbuilt Crow trigger, and the Crow trigger is Reckless Aim. Once per turn after resolving, if this action failed, draw a card. So that sets you up for the Covering Fire ability. If you miss once per turn, you can take it, draw a card, discard a card, have another model take an interact action or a walk action. This can be pretty good. I mean, obviously Gatling Gun is still pretty strong, and he lost the Scatter ability, which made it so you were nearly unable to tie him down. Now you can tie him down. Yeah, Fuhatsu has been reworked. He was seen a lot in 10 Thunders Cruise. I don't know how necessary this was, because I think most people have gotten used to it and had found ways to work around him, but now it looks like this. We are going to see how this works. And lastly, Terracotta Warriors. Terracotta Warriors have taken a huge rework. They've lost armor, they've lost Ruthless, and they have gained Nefarious Pact, so they draw a card at the end of the activation. Numbskull, they cannot gain conditions. They've gained Take the Hit, which is good, so they can protect other models, and they gained 10,000 strong. This model cannot be healed. When this model suffers damage, the damage this model suffers is changed to 1 irreducible damage. So apart from getting pinged down by stuff, you know, always will take 3 hits, which is obviously good on a Take the Hit minion for 4 points of cost. So if you're playing, for example, against Seamus, who can do 8 damage, you take 2 Terracotta Warriors, which could mainly protect all of your crew. Seamus will be livid with range because he's only shooting pottery. Back of the card, just like you, has been removed because it had some interesting interaction, I think, with the new Yoku title, and got a bit strong in that regard. The Clay Fist has been upgraded to have an engagement range of 1 instead of 5, which is good. You can punch something while not being in base contact, and all of the others still the same. So the role from the Terracotta Warrior, from being only taken in Yoku crews, has been now changed to, it's a Take the Hit model. You don't have to take an upgrade for, but I'm not really sure. You can still take a Low River Monk with the Silent Protector upgrade, who will give you healing as well as have Chi tokens, as well as take, I think, as many hits as the Terracotta Warrior takes to be killed. So yeah, I'm not sure. I think this will have to be tried out to be validated or invalidated. So that's the end of the models. So let's have a look at the rest of the FAQ and Errata real quick. Some clarification regarding actions and bonus actions. And there is a new general action that is named Slam, which replaces the yet unnamed action to remove destructible terrain. It also is able to target an impassable marker within 1 inch of any model and place this impassable marker at another place within 1 inch of the model that takes the slam action, which is good because people have been using impassable markers to block strategy markers so you can't score, and this is a way around it. Otherwise it's the same action as it has been before. There's now distinction and special restrictions. There are special restrictions and targeting restrictions. The healing paragraph has been updated because there has been a lot of confusion about the correct use of, I think, really mainly the Seeker keyword and their chronicles and the new Jetsa Everlasting front of card abilities. So this just clarifies how healing works and when it causes other effects to happen. Burning or poison have been kept to a maximum damage of 5, which I think was necessary because of the new Karis title and Obscurator model, because they could give an unlimited amount of unresisted damage to enemy models at the end of the turn if you stack enough poison or burning on them. On the other hand, it's a bit sad because you can't have McMorning now heal 20 health at the end of the turn because of poison, but it seemed to be necessary. Otherwise, let's jump into the FAQ and what has changed there. So it has finally been declared that if an action's trigger lists a model by name, summons a model, or attaches an upgrade, it cannot be used in course of the obey action, which I think is good that this has finally been clarified in written form. Also, it again has been clarified when master titles are to be chosen, because I think many people missed that while reading through the core rulebook for the 5th time. Regarding special rules, the labor contract ability has been clarified to the model having the labor contract ability on her card does not have to have line of sight to the summoned drudge. Only the model that it drops a scheme marker and summons the drudge by discarding a card needs to have line of sight to the summoned drudge. Vengeance ability, it has been clarified that the vengeance ability does not apply after the model with the vengeance ability uses take the hit to be the target of an action, because being targeted and being the target of an action are separate, though closely related. It means that if a Gwizin takes the hit, you won't get the damage from vengeance. So hooray, that has been finally worked out, and I think everybody is happy, more or less. The other important things for me that have been clarified is the clause Norwood Pocket Full of Personalities trigger. Choose a trigger with a targeting restriction of enemy only if the target of his action is a friendly model. It has been clarified that no clause triggers chosen by a pocket full of abilities must still meet all of its normal targeting restrictions in order to be resolved. So hooray, you can't use clause and Vasilisa to summon a shit ton of Stitch Togethers in turn 1. So yeah, I think that was an oversight there, which has been abused by some people. They had their fun. It has now been made so they can't do that anymore, which is, I think, for the good. Otherwise, for Maxine, I guess, Monomaniacal's Calculate the Possibilities action. Breach Burned will trigger for each tome card that you discard from your Fate deck during the Calculate the Possibilities action. If you discard 3 tomes, you will heal 3 times. So overall, that's a summary of everything that has been changed as far as I, with my limited understanding and brain capacity, I am able to understand it. There will have to be a lot of playtesting right now. Overall, as my personal opinion, I think this is this was a very welcome change. It was a bit earlier than I did expect it, and it was a bit less of a change than I did expect, but Weird also mentioned that they will change stuff in the future, and we will be seeing, I think, another Gaining Grounds more or less soon. In my opinion, there are still some models that need some love to be playable, like they gave some love to the Mole Man and to the Boltangin, but in that 4 to 6 Soulstone category, there are some more models who need some love, and also I think there are some masters, also some of the new titles who need to be reined in a tiny bit. I mean, I'm not complaining as an Explorer Society player, but if you nerf Ivan, you have to at least think about reworking Keyray 2 to some extent. We will see about that in the future. Anyways, if you think of anything that I've missed, which I'm sure is lot, let me know in the comments and tell me how you like this video. If you want more videos of this ilk in the future, we'll be filming another battle report this week, which will hit YouTube, I think, in the mid of March. So stay tuned for that as always, and I will see you at the next battle reports here at the Hidden Breach.